we're working to connect a region of over 600 more bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. I'm Maricar Velasco delivering to you the latest news in and around the ASEAN region. On today's headlines. Indonesian authorities said divers have found the second black box from a doomed Lion Airjet that crashed last year, killing all 189 people on board. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen blasted the European Union on Saturday for holding the country hostage with threats to axe trade preferences after it held elections with no credible opposition. And ASEAN 5 is to feel impact of global slowdown. Indonesian authorities said divers have found the second black box from a doomed Lion Airjet that crashed last year, killing all 189 people on board. Indonesia's Navy spokesman Agung Nugroho was quoted in local media as saying the recorder was found 8 meters deep under mud on the sea floor. A flight data recorder was recovered shortly after the crash, but listening to the last conversations between the pilots and ground control should help investigators finish piecing together what went wrong in the short flight. All 189 people on board died when flight JT610 fell into the sea shortly after taking off from the western city of Pangkal Pinang. The pilot had asked air traffic control for permission to turn back to the airport, but then contact was lost. Investigators say the plane had encountered technical problems. Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, Public Affairs Office Chief Colonel Noel De Toyato said poll bets running for national and local posts are advised to coordinate with military units during the campaign period for their security from possible rebel attacks, especially in New People Army's NPA-infested areas. De Toyato said candidates can request for security, but it is up to the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, to approve them. He said in a message to the Philippine News Agency they can update their campaign trail with the AFP unit in their area to give them area security as long as they coordinate in advance so that troops can be pre-deployed. The election period began on Sunday, January 13. Earlier, De Toyato said the AFP would ensure the peaceful conduct of the May polls and all election-related activities this year, including the Bangsamoro Organic Law plebiscite on January 21 and February 6. A Myanmar judge dismissed an appeal by 2 Reuters journalists jailed for 7 years while investigating atrocities committed against the Rohingya, dashing slim hopes that the pair could be freed early.
Yes, I am only one.
We now feel that it is for the President of Myanmar to correct the injustice that is made, and the European Union repeats that we call for these journalists to be released immediately and unconditionally.
A Malaysian state announced it had a new sultan Saturday who was expected to be elected king after the former monarch abdicated following his reported marriage to a Russian former beauty queen. Citing a senior palace official, the official Bernama news agency said Tengku Abdullah Shah has replaced his father, Sultan Ahmad Shah, as the ruler of Pahang State. Local reports said the move was designed to pave the way for Sultan Abdullah to be chosen as the next king of Malaysia by the Council of Rulers, who will choose a new king on January 24. Malaysia is a constitutional monarchy with a unique arrangement where the national throne changes hands every 5 years between rulers of the country's 9 states. Pahang State is due to provide the next ruler. The country was thrown into shock Sunday when reigning King Sultan Muhammad V abdicated unexpectedly after just 2 years of rule, following reports that he married an ex-beauty queen in Russia in November during a purported 2-month medical leave. The abdication was first for the country since its independence from British rule in 1957. The Department of Foreign Affairs said no Filipinos were among the victims of the explosion at a bakery in Paris. The Philippine Embassy in Paris said it was informed by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs that none of the fatalities or the around 50 who were injured in the explosion was from the Philippines. There are around 25,000 Filipinos in France, majority of them in Paris. Charge d'Affaires Aileen Mendiola said the explosion at the bakery along Rue de Trevi was believed to have been caused by a gas leak. Meanwhile, the Paris Fire Department said rescuers have found a woman's body under the rubble of the bakery, bringing the overall death toll to 4. Paris Fire Department spokesman Eric Moulin told reporters Sunday that 9 people were still in critical condition from the explosion that devastated a Paris street, and 45 others also injured, but not as seriously. He had said earlier that French rescuers were searching for a missing woman living in the building where the bakery was located. Paris prosecutor Remy Heights said Saturday the cause of the blast appeared to be accidental. He said Paris firefighters were already on the scene to investigate a suspected gas leak at the bakery when the explosion happened. 2 firefighters were among those killed. Paris authorities said 12 neighboring buildings that were damaged by the blast have been evacuated. Temporary accommodations were provided for about 40 residents, while dozens of others have been housed by family and friends. ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen blasted the European Union on Saturday for holding the country hostage with threats to axe trade preferences after it held elections with no credible opposition. The EU threatened in October to withdraw the duty-free everything but arms scheme, which benefits exports from Cambodia's garment and footwear sector, the largest formal employer. The multi-billion-dollar sector employs hundreds of thousands of laborers and is seen as one of the 66-year-old's few vulnerable positions in the country he has run for nearly 34 years by building up vast patronage networks. In recent months, he has requested pardons for activists and eased up on the crippled opposition, which was banned in a Supreme Court ruling ahead of the July vote swept by Hun Sen's ruling Cambodian People's Party. The moves were seen as concessions to avoid any loss of the trade preferences, but Hun Sen has balked at the idea of his hand being forced and said so in his most direct comments on the issue yet in a meeting with former Irish Prime Minister Enda Kenny in Phnom Penh. Malaysia is not alone in facing the prospects of a slowing economy this year. In fact, the whole of Asia, including the 5 largest economies in ASEAN or ASEAN 5, comprising Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines, will feel the impact of the oncoming global slowdown in growth to varying degrees. With international trade and investment turning softer, trade tensions remaining elevated, and financial markets still in flux, the outlook for the global economy as a whole in 2019 has certainly become gloomier. This, however, should not be construed as a falling off a cliff moment for the global economy. The world's gross domestic product, or GDP, will still grow this year and the following year, albeit a slow pace compared with 2018. The World Bank, for one, projects global GDP to expand 2.9% this year and 2.8% in 2020, moderating from the estimated 3% in 2018 in its recently released 2019 Global Economic Prospects Report. In the report entitled Darkening Skies, the global lending institution acknowledges that downside risks to the world economy have become more acute in recent months. Malaysian government officials have come out to say they are still undecided on whether or not they will legalize cryptocurrency. The matter is still under consideration, which is frustrating those looking to seize the moment to help the Malaysian cryptocurrency industry grow. Malaysia is currently one of the few Southeast Asian nations not to have a clear and defined stance on digital currency at this moment in time. Nobody is quite sure when or if a decision will be made in the near future, and nobody is sure if crypto is legal or not. The Malaysian Federal Territories Minister Khalid Abdul Samad recently confirmed the indecision when attending a charity event in Kuala Lumpur, reported on by the local media outlet, the Malay Mail. Samad said they are still not sure which direction to take in regards to legalizing cryptocurrency. Because of such indecision from the Malaysian government, they are lagging behind other financial powerhouses in Southeast Asia. Although Thailand also took its time to draft a regulatory framework for its crypto sector, they are now powering ahead with the Thai SEC recently issuing more licenses to crypto-related businesses. Malaysian palm oil future rebounded from a one-week low on Friday, tracking rises in crude oil prices. The market earlier fell on concerns of oversupply and overnight soy oil weakness on the Chicago Board of Trade. The benchmark palm oil contract for March delivery on the Bursa Malaysia Derivatives Exchange was up to 0.4% to 2,171 ringgit or $530.29 a ton at the close of trade. It earlier fell to 2,146 ringgit, its lowest since January 4, but traded flat for the week. Said a Kuala Lumpur-based trader, palm prices rose on crude oil's gains. Vietnam's new private airline Bamboo Airways will commence commercial flights on January 16 after repeated delays, the company said in a statement to news agencies. Initially, the carrier will operate 37 domestic routes and also start international flights to Asian countries this year, starting with Japan, South Korea, and Singapore. After receiving a business license last November, the company secured an air operator certificate from the Civil Aviation Administration of Vietnam earlier this week, allowing it to start services after having postponed its launch twice. Minimum ticket prices for the first domestic routes have been set at an ultra-cheap 149,000 dong or $6.42 each. Hotel and Leisure Company FLC Group, which owns Bamboo Airways, will be competing in one of the world's fastest-growing aviation markets against state-owned Vietnam Airlines and budget carrier Vietjet. Bamboo Airways will initially use 20 leased narrow-body and wide-body aircraft. FLC agreed to buy 24 Airbus A321neo planes worth $3.2 billion at list price for Bamboo Airways. Back in June, it signed a commitment for 20 Boeing twin-aisle 787-9 Dreamliners at a list price of $5.6 billion. More news when ASEAN in Focus returns.
Hi guys, I'm Ariel.
And I'm Kenneth, and we're your new hosts for The Break Room.
So please watch us every Monday at 7:30 to 8 in the evening. We are one with 25.
Hello everyone! I'm here in Cairo, Egypt at the famous pyramids of Giza. Stay tuned to watch Digital Nest every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Reporting from EBC Egypt Bureau, I'm Zara Angeles Valdez, and I am one with 25.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave some love by giving it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe here at EBC Digital Nest so you don't miss any of our upcoming features.
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Welcome back. The ASEAN University Network, or AUN, is an Asian university association. It was founded in November 1995 by ASEAN member countries, including 13 universities. After the enlargement of ASEAN by the ASEAN Charter in 1997 and 1999, the AUN membership has been increasing. Take a look.
It was 1967. Turbulent times in the world and no less in the region. When a handful of countries in Southeast Asia first came together to form the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, foremost on the minds of their leaders were peace and stability in the region. Cooperation and unity would not only bring about peace, but also accelerate economic growth and prosperity, social progress, and cultural development of these countries. One set of initiatives by ASEAN to strengthen the foundation for a prosperous and peaceful community of Southeast Asian nations is in the field of education.
While there was agreement on the important role of education for unity and security in the region, it was only in 1992, during the 4th meeting of the ASEAN heads of governments in Singapore, were there efforts for greater cooperation in education. One outcome of this was the establishment of the ASEAN University Network, or AUN, in 1995, a significant and important ASEAN instrument in the field of education.
The concept of establishing an ASEAN university, as it were, really started when the education ministers in this region sat down for the first time in 1977. So in the past, of course, it was to support the main goals of ASEAN, which are about peace and stability and economic progress and social development. And the role of education was one of the vehicles, the sectoral vehicles to support the furthering of these regional objectives and goals that were enunciated since 1967. Along the way, of course, with the enunciation of the ASEAN Community 2015 and the three community pillars: political security, economic, socio-cultural. The role of education has also been to see how it can be a part of and to support ASEAN integration.
The ASEAN University Network began with 11 universities, and as ASEAN expanded, so did the AUN. It has since grown to become a highly visible organization with a membership of 30 universities, all of whom are nominated by the respective ASEAN member states. By serving as a policy-oriented body for higher education in the region and by fostering cooperation in research and teaching, the network seeks to strengthen the quality of human resource development and higher education across ASEAN.
So at this point in time, it's really about getting the leading universities in the region to sit down and network together, talk about issues that will have to be resolved in terms of credit transfers, accreditation, even syncing the academic semesters, and of course facilitating student exchanges and mobility, cross-border mobility for students, as well as seeing how the different academic disciplines in all these universities can also support the ASEAN integration goals and prepare the young people for professional or workplace mobility.
While there is much work to be done to realize the full potential of cooperation in education, universities in the network have benefited from their membership. The National University of Singapore is one of 3 universities representing Singapore in the AUN and has been part of the AUN since its formation 21 years ago.
We are very much part of Southeast Asia, and it's important to get to know our neighbors, the universities in our vicinity. Yeah, I think AUN has tremendous impact because we are working with young people. We're working with the top echelon of society, the people who will be the business, political leaders of tomorrow. And if we at this level can give our students favorable impressions and favorable working relationships within the region, I think it bodes well for ASEAN and Southeast Asia.
Besides institutions of higher learning, efforts have been made to promote ASEAN awareness at all levels of the education system in member countries. After the 11th ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur in 2005, ASEAN education ministers identified 4 priorities in education cooperation. An outcome of this was the development of the ASEAN Curriculum Sourcebook as a tool to advance an understanding of the ASEAN identity, as well as to develop in young people a better understanding of the diversity of cultures across the region.
The motivation always was to provide a reference source for teachers in primary and secondary schools mainly, to be able to impart what is it about ASEAN to their students. And of course this takes different forms. So rather than developing it as a curriculum and requiring countries to straight away put it into their national curricula, it has always been the intention to provide it as a teaching resource. And the Curriculum Sourcebook's main intention was to help foster that sense of the identity of being part of the region, what it means to have that kind of the cultural identity.
The extent to which the ASEAN Curriculum Sourcebook has been introduced and used differs across member nations. A major challenge is that while agreements to cooperate at the regional level are reached, individual countries still have to balance regional commitments with national priorities and interests.
It is in the interest of every ASEAN member state to maintain ASEAN as a united and strong organization. A weak and disunited ASEAN serves nobody's interest. All of us in ASEAN, all 10 of us, serve 2 sets of interests, our national interest and ASEAN regional interest. And I think when this is true of all countries, and our first foreign minister, Mr. Rajaratnam, said this, in a seminal speech he made 45 years ago, in August 1967.
Nonetheless, cooperation in the field of education has laid foundations of peace and stability in the region. Efforts such as developing an ASEAN curriculum and introducing ASEAN studies in schools, or even the setting up of an ASEAN university, has not only helped to bring people together, but also forged a sense of regional identity.
With a collective sense of identity as one ASEAN, the ASEAN University Network plays a major role in collaborative efforts to promote peace and stability in the greater East Asian region. The ASEAN +3 cooperation involves the AUN collaborating with universities from Japan, China and South Korea with a broader goal to promote East Asian identity and solidarity through greater cooperation in the field of education.
And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Maricar Velasco and I am one with 25.